So, okay. So normally what I do is I introduce the topic, and then I will talk after introducing the two of you. I'll introduce the topic and then kind of ask you questions. Could be one for both of you. That will go on a couple of rounds. Then I'll ask you questions individually, and then I'll throw at the end. Normally, I also get questions on the phone from people who are there. So, yeah. That's how it will work.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Karjat, Bangalore, and Pune. All right. Utkarsh, should we go for it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are.
Excellent. So we are live, ladies and gentlemen. I've got two wonderful people with me this time round. This is Tell Me About It's edition on trying to understand the world of health, really. So trying to figure out with Shyju Varkey and Ashdin Doctor. Now, let me just talk about both of them in flattering terms. So I'm sure that they'll recognize that these are not particularly like I'm going to read out the resume or something, but Shyju has been he's just been brilliant throughout his career. He's been a batchmate of mine. The fondest memory I have of Shyju is that he used to come into my classroom and when I was a student along with him, and he used to write strange notes on the blackboard, which is to say and one I remember is the crux of the biscuit is in the apostrophe. So that was really interesting, and I used to see many a bewildered professor just come in and just look at that damn page and wonder what happened. So he's been in these mind shifts for a very, very long period of time, and hopefully he's been deep into the corporate. He's been in radio, right? You've been in radio, and you've also been in advertising, and now you are also exploring this wonderful world of yoga, and you're also kind of delving into it. I would say you've you've taught a very good session, and I believe you're doing it again in Mica this year. Your yoga thing, and you're doing some great stuff online. So this is the way in which I'd love to introduce you. So as I said, it's no LinkedIn profile. Ashdin Doctor is another very interesting person. I have listened to your podcast, Ashdin, for the longest period of time. I'm a big fan. I think Ashdin's podcast is probably amongst the top 5 or 10 in the country, The Habit Coach. And he's been doing this for a very long period of time. I mean, not just the podcast, I mean, but also the health consultancy. I think he's pivoted a couple of times, but he's essentially, I think, found his niche in habit coaching. He's done a very, very input from, again, being in the corporate world with Ormax, and then suddenly now he's only at a directorial place, so he's not in day-to-day operations, and he's kind of shifted completely into health consultancy and of a specific nature. So welcome, both of you. This is a great opportunity. I have promised both of you that this is not going to be a normal type of webinar, so I'm just going to have a bit of fun, right? So that's the whole idea. Perfect. Hopefully our Wi-Fi's, our dogs and cats and Karjat's thunder and everything helps us complete this. Well, so this is how we'll play it. I'm going to ask you a question. Anyone of you can go first. Maybe we can raise a hand to if you want to interrupt me as much as you want. This is the last I'm going to speak for a very long period of time. The world is out here to listen to you guys, not me. So I'm going to ask this first question. I'm going to shut up. Here's the deal, right? I meet so many students, okay, on campus, right? Or even young professionals. Now, these guys ask me this, and whenever I talk about health, or whenever I talk about, hey, fitness, or whenever I talk about any specific kind of fitness, yoga, weight training, whatever it is, I get this glazed sort of look in students' eyes, okay? And basically the question behind that glaze is, how can it be bad when it feels so good? And it's their entire thing is this stream of consciousness wherein it's just feeling good, man. And I think that in two parts. One is that everyone's encouraging them to be like that, even in campus. So late nights, junk food, etc. is happening. And the second is that when they join the workforce, everyone's encouraging them to put their hard yards and stuff like that and not really invest in their health. Now, we are seeing a little bit of a change maybe with this generation, the rest of it, but not enough to my recognition. My question to both of you is, because you are in this situation, you have experienced this generation and stuff like that, what can you do and what can you say to this generation, okay, in order for them to consider a different life, a different lifestyle that will help them? So anyone can go first.
Shall we go alphabetically? Ashdin, you?
Okay, that's a good one,
Sure.
Shyju. That's a good one.
Superb. So, I have a very interesting take on this. Next to this that are important. The first is that, all throughout school, the emphasis has been put on working hard, right? The harder you work. In fact, I get so many messages from people saying that I just don't feel like studying. I don't know what to do. And I was like, okay, start with like 1 hour, at least 20 minutes. No, I have to study 15 hours a day. Otherwise, I'm not going to pass this exam. So the work is equal to the amount of hard work you're putting in. The problem is that when you come into college and when you go later on into workforce, it's not the hard work that actually makes you efficient. It's efficiency and the ability to get things done. And that switch nobody teaches you. So what's interesting is that they are still force-fitting the school working into this college format. So the efficiency is not what they're looking at. They're looking at the hard work. And it's at that in-between stage. Also, what's interesting is at this time, their circadian rhythm is very strange. So the circadian rhythm is when you fall asleep, right? So when you're in your teenage years, the circadian rhythm changes and you prefer to stay awake later on and sleep later on. Big issues with education in schools is that the early morning classes is the worst time to teach somebody something, especially this age.
You're making a lot of friends with a lot of Micans right now, at least, Ashton. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. 100%. Okay, sorry. Go on.
So it's interesting because you need to work with your biology on these things. But the aspect is that, there's an expression saying lagam chuti, which is that your reins are now free. You can make your own choices. And we have not taught people how to make those choices. Also because health you only feel later on in life. Now you don't feel that the problem earlier on in life.
Yes.
And like we know, prescriptive medicine doesn't work. It's only curative that works. So right now we are at that prescriptive stage.
So that is your diagnosis of the situation. Dr. Shyju, what about you? What do you think?
I think the whole idea of success is steeped in the here and the now. People want to make it quick and they want to make it fast. I don't believe that's the way of life.
Okay.
Because if someone called compounding the eighth wonder of the world, I think it comes from a knowledge that the biggest wins don't necessarily go to those with the highest returns. It's those who earn pretty good returns maintained over a long period of time. Short successes maintained over a long period of time. Endurance really is the key.
Right.
I believe we've been conditioned to think in that manner yet.
So I'm sure both of you haven't. I certainly wasn't. So I just wanted to ask you, Shyju, you said something really interesting here, and I just want to pick on that. Right? We have not been conditioned that way. I just wanted to delve a little more. How did you yourself make the switch? Because I remember a switch to maybe a healthier lifestyle or whatever. Because see, what happens is when somebody sees you on screen, they see a cool first batch mic, the rest of it, and you've actually made that switch to somebody who is completely different and completely unrecognizable to what you were maybe on campus. So I'm just trying to understand how this has happened with you. Maybe that will serve as inspiration as well.
I think that happened over a period of time, and there are lots of inflection points. I think one of those happened. I think in 2004, I was about 8 years into work, and all I'd done was taken 1 day off. 1 month off work from the time that I got married. I was in 15 hours a day, 8 days a week, and then my back gave me. Right? And I was in Ogilvy at that time, working on the Unilever business, and we just won the whole entire Brookbound, one of the biggest wins that we'd ever had. Pretty stressful period, and my back kind of packed up on me. And then I realized that I was off the grid for 3 months. I didn't get a call from anyone. Life went on normally. Here I was leading the business, thinking that the edifice of Ogilvy and Unilever were on my shoulders. No one gave a damn. Okay? So the realization that you are just a cog in the wheel, the luckier ones, it hits earlier.
Right.
Yeah, that's what made me realize, why on earth am I putting in so much into something that actually doesn't save lives, which was advertising at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay,
right?
all right.
That helped me ease my foot off the pedal. So during the 3 months, I recovered. I took a month, and then I began to actively put myself into a lot of interests which I used to have earlier when I was a student, whether it was theater, whether it was tennis, whether it was music. I put myself into that. So work then leads to an end and not an end in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen your plays on YouTube. They're pretty cool, man. And not just that, I believe your wonderful face has also appeared on the hoarding and stuff like that. So obviously, you did something which was going beyond the 9 to 5. And I just was trying to figure out, how can you transmit this wonderful insight that you've got into somebody who's not got it, not this,
So here's the thing, right? So my most productive years happened after I took my foot off the pedal. You realize, otherwise you end up being a very unidimensional human being. I knew about teas, I knew about watches, I knew about nothing else.
Right.
Right? The moment you begin to cultivate this interest, you meet people that are cut of a different cloth. It actually enriches you as a person, which in turn you can feed back into your work. So when I actually I team that launched Radio 1 in Bangalore, and because I had learned and I had a couple of pretty senior colleagues of mine who had gone through something similar, we said that we'll make sure no one goes through what we did, which means that 7 o'clock in a radio station, which works 24/7, 7 o'clock lights were out. You had to go out. You had to cultivate another interests. So everyone but everyone in the Bangalore office had a second life.
That's nice.
And we, at one point in time, actually for a pretty long point, would probably have been the most profitable radio station in the country.
It's probably because of that.
in a Bangalore. Because we figured that there's no point taking ourselves so seriously. It's pointless.
I think that's a really interesting point. Let me ask Ashdin now to weigh in on this. Ashdin, in your view, obviously you're somebody who's actually seeing people, right, who are trying to get out. How do you deal with this? I mean, what's the one pattern that you see amongst people who are stuck in this no life?
So the most important thing is that, unfortunately, that change in health or the importance of health only happens once there's an emergency that takes place. Very rarely do people use it or get into the preventive aspects of it. Them that it can improve your productivity. So it is not from a point of view of we take care. You don't know what's going to happen to you in the future. Right. It comes from a side of, if you can do this, you could actually be more productive. You could actually get 2 hours off. And that's how we actually work on it.
That's so interesting. So hold on, but let me just probe a little deeper on this. So what you're saying is that while whatever we feel the wiser thing to do, what Shyju was saying, that there is a life and stuff like that. People are so stuck in that fog and that maze that they don't really recognize it. And the only way, in your experience, to get through to them is by saying, hey, you can do even better in this race.
Yeah. So the issue is that, what is it that you're after? Very importantly, the intention normally is skewed, right? If it is earning money, getting nation, or etc., then it's that blinkers on that they have in that direction. Then anything else doesn't make sense. But imagine if you're talking about social life or new interests. But imagine if those new interests could make you meet new people who would help you out in your job. That suddenly starts making sense again. So I think, helping people along with their intention right now is important, and slowly turning the intention away is the next step. So when I work with CEOs, it's about work, and then imagine if you could actually have family life as well. What if you took an entire week? What would happen? Do you think your company would shut down? And then suddenly they say, no, my company won't shut down. And suddenly they take a day off.
Right.
So it's very interesting to see that part of the journey.
So what I like about your approach is that you're actually dealing with their current motivational patterns, and you're kind of connecting to them and going along on the ride with those motivational patterns, and then kind of saying, hey, you know what, and kind of suggesting something, which is pretty good. My follow-up question to you on this one is, who do you find are the toughest to change then?
I love it. The toughest to change are the ones that who are married to the identity, right? I have sleep problems. I am like this. So now, as soon as it's become their identity, it's impossible to change them.
Right.
So getting them to understand that there is a different identity that they could possibly get on board, that is where the main challenge comes in. And there are lots of people who self-sabotage. So I've had people who do that as well.
So what you're saying is it's not age specific. It's not gender specific even. It is actually something to do with the fact that you've converted that into some kind of self-identity. And then it kind of plays itself out. That's very interesting. Shyju, what do you think? In your experience, you've seen people who are stuck in their ways, man?
In so many ways, really. It's interesting. Ashdin spoke about what their motivations are, right?
Yeah.
Now, success is usually defined in two ways.
Yeah.
Growth in the corporate ladder and...
Correct.
Now, these are shifting goalposts. I still remember there's this one fairly senior person that I coach who was around the same age as us, was telling, I first realized that I told myself that if I make 10 lakh an annum, I'm done. I don't need to work another day in my life. So that came and went pretty early. And around the mid 2000s, it says, do koke to hona chahiye, which is when I learned that koke meant crore in Hindi. And now he heads Asia Pac, one of the big four. And he says, now 15 crore is what I need. Because now suddenly I can't go to Manali on a holiday. It has to be the Gold Coast. The kid has to be in an Ivy League university. Where is this going to end? Right?
Okay.
And then you want to be CEO by the time you're 35. So you're CEO by you're 35. And then what happens? You reach the top of the mountain and then there's nothing else to conquer.
Yeah.
What happens after that? So these really are questions that people begin to ask once the race is in their minds kind of, they're running it and they realize it's a mirage.
Right.
At some point in time you tire out and then you ask yourself these questions. And I think that really is maybe a large part of the existential angst that corporate India is going through right now.
That's so interesting. Ashton, follow-up question to you on this, right? To your mind, this is the most compelling argument, right? The most compelling argument is, I will help you become CEO faster. Now, I see a dichotomy over here. The fact is that you actually want to also tell them, like, do something healthier. Like, what Shyju is saying will happen. No, do khoka will become 10 khoka, will become 20 khoka, and all of that stuff. Now, over here, is there a way in which we can construct a different argument, or do you think that is completely a waste of time?
So the different argument here is on understanding which rules you're blindly following. Right. So there are rules of society that have told you that more money is good. Right. There are rules of society that now you have to go and party in the Bahamas or whatever. Right? These are not necessarily things that you personally want, but the world has told you as a
beautifully put. Yeah.
So slowly, if you can start understanding which are the rules that you blindly follow. You need to have this kind of a family. Why? As soon as you start questioning that why, and these things start deteriorating or disintegrating rather in front of you, that's when that change starts taking place. Oh wow! So I got the dogs.
You got the dogs. I was like, yay! You know what will be really funny if my dog starts barking from here.
I'm trying to figure out how to mute it. Okay, cool.
It's a health vibration, man. I'm telling you. Okay. Wow, I think Ashdin and his dog has quietened down. Ashdin, you still there?
I'm still here. I just put it on mute because I think
not a problem.
Just come into our farm.
Not a problem. I'll take it to Shyju in the meanwhile. Shyju, do you have a more compelling argument on getting somebody who's like so driven? You know that Hrithik Roshan character in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara? Make money by 40. That's the visual that I got when you were talking about this, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way in which you can say something. It's like even in the movie, he goes in the ocean somewhere. He sees a different world, and that's when something like snaps. What do you think?
Well, that I think is a shot in the dark, right? Hoping that you do something and then there's voila, light that dawns upon you.
Right.
I think it can actually be far more simpler than that. And this, I can actually quote examples of fairly senior people that I coach. And I was talking to them, and they've given me permission to quote them about this, right?
Lovely. Yeah.
I think there are three main problems that people face. I mean, after they're 40, 45. One is in terms of their physical health, where they are physically.
Yeah.
Mental/emotional, and the third is financial.
Correct.
These are three pegs around which problems begin to crop up, right? People spend 20 years at work, running on the treadmill, and then you find that as you get older, problems dawn: diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, the back giving up, and so on and so forth. And you realize, and that, listen, I've spent no time on taking care of myself. Why have I been running this race without taking care of myself? So that's a problem people come to me with, which is where I think yoga has been helping. I've been kind of helping them pivot around that. The mental and emotional actually is a bit more interesting. So I coach someone who's the president of a company.
Right.
Again, he's extremely successful, fabulous person for whom the business meant everything. His whole life revolved around business. And then one fine day, his daughter turned 18, got into medical school, and went off to the UK. So here's this man sitting saying, I don't even know my daughter. I've hardly spent time with her.
Yeah.
I spent 18 years providing for her, but not being the kind of dad that I wanted to be.
Got it.
Now I'm never going to get that opportunity.
Right.
What's now going to happen?
So that was the aha moment, essentially.
Right. And the same thing happens with your partners, right?
Yeah.
You're wedded to your job.
Yeah.
You drift away from your partners.
That's true.
During COVID, there are people who are in the US whose elderly parents are here who have health issues. The parents all by themselves, extremely successful, but no way to connect.
Yeah.
That comes back to bite you. So at what cost success? Is a question that kind of comes up. The other one is financial that I mentioned, right?
Yeah.
After 40, 45, you don't know how much money is enough after a point of time. When do you get off this tiger?
It's really interesting that you mentioned that. See, it's like this, right? So when you see a cigarette pack, right? All of us see the damn stuff happening. All of us, but we, depending upon the level of your addiction, we still smoke. So now the whole thing is that what you're talking about is we create our own blind spots, is what I've noticed from whatever you told me, and we just find it so damn difficult to look beyond those blind spots unless and until somebody, you had a back problem or somebody else has a different kind of problem. What I'm trying to figure out, maybe Ashton, if you're in, you can weigh in as well. But what I'm trying to figure is there a way in which you can short circuit this process? And here's the question, right? I've been starting to get a stream of questions over here from people listening on. Here's the question, which can contextualize it to a younger audience. They're saying, hey guys, you know what? It's all right. You're talking of self-actualization and stuff like that. But while working 14 hours a day, how do I make time to learn new skills or even work out? Okay, so that's a question that you've got. What do you tell a guy or a girl like this? Or even though we are not eating outside food, we feel unhealthy and unfit. Maybe can you help us navigate around that? So maybe any one of you can take any question and go for it. Really, did you understand? I'm just trying to make it context. Yeah.
Yeah, very very interesting.
Yeah.
Like for example, what I tell people with 14 hours of working every day.
Yeah.
Very often people are not working those 14 hours. Their amount of work that they are doing is far lesser. So
100%.
what I tell people is, imagine if you had to have a limit. You will only work 12 hours. Put a gun to your head. Anything more and you shoot it. Right? That's it. Then once 12 becomes comfortable, make it 10. And you suddenly start realizing that your efficiency starts increasing and you're not on that hamster wheel, work hard. And that's how you get out of that 14-hour trap. So I don't know if you've heard the podcast on the Pomodoro technique, which is
yes,
work for 25.
25 minutes,
Correct.
yeah. Right.
That is extremely useful because half the time we're spending on Instagram, WhatsApp messages, and distractions, and not necessarily on work. So there is an ability to put it out.
Sorry, Ashdin, do you think that a lot of it is actually societally driven? Because we are part of a tribe when we get into an office, right? And so whatever everybody else is doing and whatever the boss is queuing in, that's the kind of thing that it requires a lot of bravery, courage, balls, whatever you want to call it, to make do something else. I mean, imagine if everybody is behaving in a particular way. And agencies, Shyju, right? Agencies are like a hotbed for
In fact, can I answer that using my own examples?
Yeah. Go for it.
Like, since you're talking 14 hours a day, I started off saying I used to work 15 hours a day for 8 years.
Correct.
And then there's this feeling of indispensability that you build into yourself. That's a lot of bullshit. You believe that the system will crumble if you aren't there. That's hogwash. You pull yourself out, the world will go on. You make yourself to be much more important than what you really are. And I talk from experience, right? So I went back and did all those things. My productivity increased, and that's what Ashton was alluding to. The other thing, since I also spoke to you about yoga. Yoga happened to me in 2014.
Right.
I applied. I wanted to go to the Himalayas and learn yoga, and there's this very long waiting list. I'd applied sometime in September for a course starting in June. And I was waitlisted. Sometime around the middle of May, I was still waitlisted. So they said, listen, you might have to come for another batch. And a week before that, I got a mail saying, listen, one person has dropped out. Can you now come in? So I had 1 week. I was running a station. I was marketing head nationally for this. I called up my boss and I told him to go. How you manage? At the end of the day, I need to run the station. I will make sure it's run. And sure enough, I had a team that was strong enough, which I explained to them what needs, and they're mature enough to understand. But because we also worked on this sense of helping each other whenever it wasn't really at the peer level, but also at the boss and junior levels. There were sales that had to kind of come in. 2014, you must remember, was when we were just coming out of the 2008 recession. We were peaking. We were slamming on the accelerator so hard. I pulled out. I took off for a month. If you go back to the records of Radio 1, it'll show you that Radio 1 Bangalore, as incredibly successful a station as it was, it clocked its highest sales in the month when I was not there. But I had my sales head coming to me and saying, maybe you should take off more often. You being here might not be as good as you think it is. True story.
No, it's good. It's a good story. It's a really good story.
So if you tell yourself that working 14 hours is a great thing, sorry, brother, you have another thing coming. I don't buy into that at all.
That's Ashton. Anything on this? Any take on this? Especially what do I do? How do I make time for learning new skills and working out? Do you think it's just a matter of discipline, as Shyju says, or is there some added layer that you'd like to speak about?
So the way I look at it is that firstly, you have to figure out if learning and working out are important things to you at this point of time. If it's something because other people are doing it and hence it's cool to do, then it's not something that you should be doing. Unless there's a desire and intention for it, then put it in. And then schedule it. So you make sure that you at least put 20 minutes down. So like we talk about at least doing a Tabata workout, which is a 4-minute workout. Everyone has 4 minutes, right? Similarly, right, we all have 10 minutes to maybe write a gratitude journal. So these are small things that you can do. And the whole idea of habits, as you know, is start off with something small and then let it grow over time. Let it compound, like you were saying, over time. So that's the way that you should approach this. And about being indispensable, absolutely right. Like if you make yourself indispensable, you're going to be stuck in the same position for life. Right. The only way to grow is to make somebody come and take over your position so you can do something else.
Right. No, this is fascinating because I'm just listening to you guys and there's so many questions coming in, right? It's so damn difficult, right? To actually
learning how to be accessible is a good thing.
Yes. No, here's a question. We have reached a point where we are mindlessly scrolling on social media instead of actually connecting with people. Okay. Average screen time recorded is the highest in this time. How do you cope with screen addiction? Shyju, is there something that you'd like to say? Does yoga help? Does breathing help? Or is it too abstract?
Not at all. If the answer is is about screen time.
Yeah.
As part of one of the sessions that I do, giving the body rest, they're giving the mind rest more than the body.
Sure.
And screens are a huge impediment to that purpose. So consciously, and that's what I tell participants in my workshops, consciously try setting aside an hour a day, not looking at your phone. It's not like you've forgotten your phone somewhere.
Yeah.
Like when you wake up in the morning, for the first couple of hours, you don't need your phone. What do you need your phone for? When you're having a meal, what do you need your phone for? Keep it aside. It is damn difficult to do. I was a couple of years ago talking to a fairly senior psychotherapist, friend of mine. We were actually meeting for lunch, and I was ahead of time. I was waiting for him, and I consciously made an effort not to look at my phone at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
So he walked in, and he saw that I was just staring into empty space, people gazing.
Yeah.
And we go back to our college days. So he said, that's so unusual. You're the first one I've seen not looking into your phone. Yeah. I say, back in the day when you sat up, you began to eavesdrop. In a way, you're opening your senses out. But today, you look into your phone, you're triggering the wrong kind of neurons. And he says, in the next 20, 25 years' time, 70% of this country is going to be afflicted either by Alzheimer's or by Parkinson's.
Wow.
So the mobile phone and screens are going to have far, far long-term ramifications than what we think it's going to be today.
That's
Me time is something that, but having said that, Sid, I must say that I think we've been exposed to a world, because I also do the ashram circuit as often as I do. There is a completely different world. There is a whole bunch of young loss. If I continued, and those are huge numbers. If you go to an average ashram, you'll find 300, 400 people at all time who are very sorted, who don't give a damn about the mobile phone, who don't give a damn about what the world's going on, who try to be in the present. Yeah. So there's a little undercurrent that's actually happening as we speak.
Ashton, let me top this with asking Ashton an even tougher question. Right? We've talked of the social media pressure. Now, Ashton, you and I are actually kind of in social media and doing a lot of work which is kind of in digital, right? I mean, you run podcasts and stuff like that. Now, here's the question: everyone keeps uploading their achievements on LinkedIn, which builds a sense of mental pressure, and we feel like a waste. Internally, you're feeling like a waste completely. Everyone's doing personal branding, and I'm like getting fucked over. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with something like that?
You never put up your own worst moments, right? So it is something that you have to learn, that nobody's ever going to put up the worst moments. It is unfortunately a reality, because so many of us are growing up with issues about hating ourselves, thinking that we're not enough. And this boils down to this "I am not enough" thought, which has always existed as human beings, but now is being amplified when we see people like this. The way that I see it is, you have to be very, very particular about who you follow. And so very often what I do is I go through my Instagram and weed out people. Does this account make me feel good or make me feel worse? Out. Does this person make me feel good or make me feel worse? Out.
It's a very therapeutic.
Because you have to protect yourself.
Ashton, I'm just curious. What are the kind of people that make you feel worse?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Undue pressure, for example. One. There are people who are constantly putting up things about the news. So I think reading the news is something that is causing a lot of damage, right? It's just too much of that. And there is something where like you get fatigue from being compassionate, right? So one of the podcasts was called Compassion Fatigue. And how many things can you be concerned about in life? Make 2 things, make 3 things your topic bus, Beyond that, what are you gonna be going after? That is the way that you weed it out.
I'm telling you, Shyju, my timeline is the most fractured, because half of my people are academics, half of them are industry guys. So it's like the right wing meets the left wing on my timeline. I go completely mad. It's nutty. But that's
I don't know where I stand.
Okay. No, I'm sure you're way better off because not too many academics. Okay, Ashdin, there's somebody who's actually saying, "Hey, where is Ashdin?" Okay, can you ask Ashdin to show his beautiful farm or something like that? So that's a wonderful thing. Maybe we can use it as part of our blooper or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's
Started.
yeah. Oh, it started. Your Wi-Fi holds up.
Fingers
I don't
crossed.
know.
Right now
Fingers
it's
crossed.
Vodafone. I hope Vodafone.
Board. Okay. All right. So here's a question, Shyju. Again, back to you. Right? I'm asking you this one. What habit should a student build who is from a top B school, who has invested 20 lakhs, but his job is bloody uncertain, especially in these COVID times? Okay. What is one asana that you can give to change his state of mind?
It's not really an asana. It's easier said than done, but this again is a very practical solution.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask him to sit in a corner and count the number of breaths that he takes in a minute.
That's interesting.
If it is an average human being takes between 15 to 18 breaths in a second.
Minute.
In a minute. And if he's as stressed as he sounds, chances are it'll cross 20, which is not a good thing. So I'll ask him to keep sitting in that corner 3 times, 4 times a day for 2 minutes each, and count his breaths and get it down to less than 10.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I was actually, Shyju, just as an aside, I was reading on Huberman. There's a guy who's done a lot of work in breathing, as did you too. It's fascinating to know how neuroscience is actually honing into the science of breathing. We've all heard of Wim Hof and the rest of it, but it is really interesting to know that there's so many neuroscientists who are getting into breathing and using it as a not just an offline intervention technique, but like, as you suggested, an online intervention technique to actually change your state of mind, which is brilliant. Ashton, you have any tips for changing state of mind while being in the moment when you're stressed out?
Breathing, for sure. So there are tons of breathing techniques. For example, the box breath is a lovely technique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. No, anything which can go beyond breathing as well. I mean, since I just talked of breathing, it would be great if you can bring in something else, contextual or whatever.
Sure. Looking at a point in infinity. Okay. So, for example, you look out of your window and look as far away as you can. Right. And you will notice after a while, the world around you fades away. 2 things happen. You lose a sense of self in that, and every aspect of the world starts feeling like it's a part of you. So, have you been to Africa and have you gone to the Ngorongoro crater?
I have not. I want to bucket list.
It's mind blowing. It's the same thing happens when you stand on a mountain in the Himalayas. You stand there and you just see vastness. You see nothing up close. The problem is when we live our life up close, we feel everything is about us. When we see something so far away, an aspect of our ego disappears. So these are very, very powerful, techniques that you can use just to very quickly change your mind space.
Okay, so what I'm understanding from both things, I mean, whether I'm doing the breathing thing or whether I'm doing the staring into space or infinity thing, what I'm getting is a different perspective. And I think the common underlying pattern that I'm seeing is there are some techniques, there are some ways in which you can actually get a different perspective on the same situation, whether it's through calming yourself down and therefore expanding time, or whether it's looking at space and looking at infinity. That's brilliant, actually. I'm sure a lot of this would be useful for the younger guys, but I'm still a little unconvinced because after you for these guys, right? So if I meet about 10 people, and maybe that's my bias speaking, if I meet 10 of these guys as students or young working professionals, they have terrible habits. They just have the worst habits ever. And I know that they are in a situation wherein they have fed it into themselves that they are, they have to live like that. So if you have to say one thing that will help them, would it still be your optimizing argument? And if it is your optimizing argument, what would you say it as? I just want to bring closer to that.
The way I would look at it is, you aren't going to force them into change. You can't force people into.
Yeah.
Even when I work with people, so I work with a lot of college kids as well, but not if their mother comes and tells me to work with them. I work with them if they come and say that, listen, I need this aspect of me to work properly. I can't function like this anymore. My mind is all over the place.
Yeah.
Cool. I will then come and work with you. But not if a mother comes in somebody else, because you can't force somebody into it. It's part of their journey that they have to go through, right? We can see that the habits are off, but they can't see it because they're inside. So till they realize that there's something better in store, they're going to continue in that process. So my thing is, you can't force that aspect of it. It is a part of the journey that they have to go through.
That's an interesting take. So basically, what you're saying is that when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Almost.
Yeah,
almost. But like when the student is ready, at least, right?
Yeah.
So the master appears because you start searching.
Yeah,
I think that's a
so
very.
The Habit Coach.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The
continue.
Habit Coach podcast has a lot of students listening in, and I didn't know that would be the case. So a lot of the questions are around these bad habits. How do I stop smoking? How do I stop porn? How do I get out of this and actually start studying? These are the kinds of questions that I get often. And once that realization takes place, that okay, this is the thing I need to change. Now I'll figure out what to change with.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Shyju, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was saying that's actually what Ashton makes is a very important point, because when you're a student, there's a sense of immortality, that nothing can ever go wrong.
Correct.
To kind of shake that is well nigh impossible. Even I have all my sessions are in the morning. I don't have sessions in the afternoon. So if you want to, you have to wake up even when I went on campus, the faculty was shocked when I said that my session started at 7 o'clock. Who's going to wake up? But the fact is, people did. And even within students, we give them very little credit. And when Ashton mentions that he has students, I'm not surprised, because there are seekers even within students. And for all the vilifying that we do of the internet also makes available guys like you, who are available for people who want to seek. Right? So it's opened up all kinds of possibilities, but those numbers are few right now. But I'm very, very hopeful. And I think that is growing much, much more significantly than we believe it is right now.
Both of you believe that you have to be a morning person? Sorry, it's a direct question, but I just want to figure out from both of you. Ashdin, what do you think of, because you talked of circadian rhythms, and since Shyju says, morning, and what are the benefits? So Ashdin, to go first.
So I find myself the most productive in the morning. So I finish all my work by 9 o'clock, and then it's party time for me, 9 o'clock in the morning. But the way that it works for other people is that if you go by the circadian clock, you can have people who work and function best from 12 in the night to 3 in the morning.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
And there are people like that, and forcing people into a certain working time frame doesn't make sense at that point of time. It's just that the majority, 60%, work best from the 8 or 9 o'clock onwards till your 5 o'clock, which is why that has become the norm. But so there are people who, I don't force people to wake up at 4.
Okay. All right. Shyju, your point?
I actually disagree with Ashdin on that. I think humans are not nocturnal beings. We never were.
Okay.
And
Shyju, you are very nocturnal in Mica, man.
I was. The thing, Sid, is that, and it goes back to the circadian rhythm, right? It wasn't until the invention of electricity and light that people began to work at night. But otherwise, humans always rose with the sun and went to sleep with the sun. And therefore, you're conditioned to be most productive when the sun is out. You might convince yourself otherwise, and we're all creatures of habit. You end up being what you want to be at the end of the day, but it is counterproductive in the long run.
That's an interesting point of view. I wonder if both of you have seen a movie called Insomniac. I think it stars Al Pacino, and it's a crazy ass movie. It's set in Alaska, and it's when the sun almost never sets, and it just has a crazy impact. Just a recommendation. Okay, question for Ashdin: is it too late to start a fitness journey? Body shaming makes me feel even more averse to picking up a workout. Any way to break the cycle of laziness and start?
So the most important thing is first get out of the habit of calling yourself fat or whatever that you are calling yourself and relating your identity to it. If you
Sorry,
start
I'm just reading.
calling yourself, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
If you start calling yourself, I am the person who's on a fitness journey, then this starts making sense in your mind, saying that okay, now I need to start improving the way that I eat, maybe, and this now I need to start improving the way that I move. And honestly, you don't have to spend an hour or two in the gym to exercise. The exercise habit starts by putting on your shoes and putting on your workout clothes, and then make it a 4-minute workout, make it a 10-minute workout, and slowly start creating your journey that way. Instead of shaming yourself, saying that I'm like this only, or people are telling me like I'm like this only.
Okay.
The moment you start creating that identity shift and you start putting in at least 1 or 2 such habits in your life, it starts taking a different trajectory altogether.
Wonderful. Okay, that's good. So start small is what I'm hearing from you, and kind of build it up from there. Question for Shyju: a solution for people who are continuously having backaches and constant headaches because of sitting on laptops for long. Is there anything that you would recommend from an
Yeah, so sitting for long periods of time ends up compressing the spine.
Yeah. Yeah.
The base of your spine.
Yeah.
So there are specific exercises that you can do to kind of elongate your spine. Like in yoga, there's a fantastic asana called the Paschimottanasana. It's a forward bend. It's a sitting forward bend. But it's not something that you will be able to do when you're in office. But in office, if you actually have a chair, you place your chair in front of you and get maybe about 4 feet away from the chair, 5 feet away from the chair, and gently bend down to touch the chair while slightly folding your knees, because you need to be careful that you don't overdo it. Okay, so there are small, gentle stretching exercises that kind of can be done. And it is very, very important, especially for those who are sitting all the time. And usually, spinal compression, back problems happen as a result of weak hip flexors. So also working on your is something that very, very few of us do, especially after we've got Western toilets in India.
Yeah.
Right? The original Indian toilets were fantastic for opening up of the hips, which are actually meant to take the body's weight. They're meant to be weight bearing, not the back. So these little shifts in our behaviors have resulted in all these adding up to us the problem that we have today.
That is pretty interesting. Ashton, question for you on top of what Shyju is saying. So I want to know, what point do you genuinely feel that you kind of changed your equation with yourself? Because for a habit coach, I guess you have to change your equation with yourself, right? And I asked that question for Shyju, but I didn't ask you. So I just wanted to close that loop on that question. When did you actually become a habit coach mentally?
So it happened when I was extremely overweight and unhealthy, and very, like I was telling you, I would sleep about 3 hours a night maybe. And on one particular day, I don't think I slept for 48 hours. We were getting a presentation ready, and I collapsed on the floor.
Right.
Sweat. I had a nice tummy at the time, and I had no idea what was going on in my life. Health had not even occurred to me. So there was unfortunate moment like this that took place. And being the typical type A person that I was, I said that next goal is get a 6-pack. So it was an aesthetic goal that started this off as a journey for me. And the next year, when I lost my fat, got a 6-pack, I realized how easy this is, and why are more people not doing this? And on that journey, I had to be exercise plus nutrition plus sleep plus de-stressing plus water, breathing. All those things had to work together for you to get to that point. So once that happened and people started coming to me for advice, what do I do now? And I got so deep into it that all the books I was reading was only about it. That's, I think, when an identity shift happened. And my goal was never to be a fit person. It was I should never be afraid of my body again. So if tomorrow you tell me, go climb this mountain, sure, aaram se. Never be fearful of my body. And that was the thought that led me through it after this whole 6-pack goal died down.
That is so. What you're saying is the way in which you are, it changed because you wanted to aesthetically look good. That was the trigger point. Did you see yourself evolve as a person? Did you see actually something fundamentally change within you? And the question is for Shyju as well. You can answer this after. Do you think because you've embraced this identity or part of your identity, whatever, did you change fundamentally as a person? Than what you were, say. Obviously, everyone changes with time, but this is a very specific shift into a healthier lifestyle or even habits, as Ashton says. Any one of you can go first.
You want to take it first?
Sure. I don't think so, Sid. It's not as if I'm devoid of all the quote-unquote bad habits that I had.
You're human.
I've never really overdone anything even before this. Everything in moderation.
Yeah, including moderation.
Whatever it is, right? And you know when to take your foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
So is there a shift? I think I'm more chilled than I used to be. I think if that was possible.
It's not. Ashdin, how about you?
I see a big change. I don't recognize the person I was before. So it was coming off from a place of extremely low self-confidence to a place of becoming confident and allowing that to grow. So I would normally never talk to people or shy away to becoming very, very social because I now had a message. I had something to share. So my identity shift was so dramatic that I honestly wouldn't recognize myself 6 years, like what I was 6 years ago.
What I like about this conversation is that we are getting diametrically different points of views at some point in time, but they are both making sense to me as a listener, right? So it's awesome because this is making it very layered. So here's a couple of questions. Shyju, here, I don't know whether you can answer it. I don't know whether you're a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, but I am a vegetarian. Can you recommend an eating routine at home which will provide me a balanced diet and keep me fit? Okay. What do you say? Any one of you can. And by the way, Ashdin, question for you: can you recommend a workout channel or a routine for a beginner?
Sure. So the food one is interesting. Basically, look at your plate and make sure that about 45% of it is filled with vegetables. Make sure that 20% of it is filled with your carbohydrates in terms of your roti, etc. It can become 20 to 10%, but not more than that. And the remaining is your protein, which are your dals and rajma. The best way for a vegetarian to get their proteins in is to mix their dals with the rice, because the dals have a certain amount of amino acids and the rice have the other that are essential in it. So that combination gives you the complete protein profile. So in a very brief nutshell, I know this is not about nutrition, so that's the way that I would approach it.
Thank you.
Sid, I have a couple of things, right? The eating is a function of three things, right? It's what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat.
Correct.
What you eat, I mean, if you're cooking, you have a certain amount of control over it, but then it gets into so many technicalities. You get into proteins, carbohydrates, amino acids, big pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Now, how much you eat is something that you can kind of control. In yoga, they say you fill half your stomach with food, half a quarter with water, and a quarter with air, irrespective of what you kind of eat. I think most Indian households have a reasonably balanced diet. What you can definitely control is when you eat it. So there's this whole intermittent fasting thing that's kind of come in, right? When you don't really need to eat as much as you think you need to eat. So if you actually reduce the intervals of your eating, you eat in an 8-hour interval, eat whatever the hell you want, whatever you want in those 8 hours, and then fast for 16 hours. It'll serve you, it'll stand you in good stead.
That's pretty interesting, actually. I've never tried fasting myself, but I have heard a lot of very positive things.
You must.
It's very difficult to start off with, but once you get into it, it's I think it's one of the more important things that anyone can do if you're chasing good health.
Wow.
So when we came to the farm here, we realized that we thought it was a holiday, so we were eating breakfast, post-breakfast, pre-lunch, lunch. So it was just mad. Now we finally gotten on to a fasting routine where we don't eat for 18 hours. So 2 o'clock is our meal, and 7 o'clock is the next meal, and after that we don't eat at all. It's been perfect for all of us, parents and me. It's just been brilliant.
Interesting. Okay, I had promised you a googly question.
Sid, before that, I just got a message. Sid, I just got a message of admonishment from a teacher of mine in yoga about what to do for the spine. Apparently, I gave a very complex answer when something is as simple as if you're sitting on your chair at work, lean forward, rest your stomach and chest on your thighs, and put your head down so that your blood rushes down and your spine gets elongated.
Oh, that's nice.
Hold it there for a minute, take about 4 or 5 deep breaths, do it once in an hour.
Brilliant. Hey, shout out to your teacher. Thank you so much. Shout out to your teacher. This is wonderful. This is the way in which we want to do this. Absolutely. All right. So here's my googly to both of you because we are nearing the end of our time together. So the googly is for Shyju, and you have to explain why. Okay. So that and the googly for Ashdin. So Ashdin, the googly is which habit do you struggle with? Okay, and why, and what do you want to do? And Shyju, obviously, which asana do you struggle with, and why, and what are you doing to sort it out?
I don't really struggle with anything. Again, it goes back to the chilled out learning in yoga, right? In yoga, you don't expect anything to happen to you. You make it happen. I mean, you don't work too hard to make it happen. It'll happen to you. I, for example, must be the one who's taken the longest in history to get into a headstand. It took me 5 years. And I practice for about an hour and a half every day. It took me 5 years to get into the headstand.
Were you frightened? Were you frightened of the headstand?
No. The first thing you break is, I've fallen about 5,000 times. You learn to fall first. But I fell. But that's not the point, right? Is that a struggle? No, it's not. I mean, you can look at it as a struggle. But then as part of the learning, I can do a headstand here and fall, and people next to me won't even know that I've fallen. I'm actually fall like a cat. You know what I mean? So you also learn in that process. So there's really no struggle in yoga. You only do what you are capable of doing, and I think there's a great life lesson in that as well.
Wonderful. Now that's a multi-layered answer, yeah, Shyju. You also got away from it. But good one. And what about Ashdin? What do you think?
The habit I struggle with the most is getting rid of my phone. So I too am a phone addict, and creating that is the most difficult one for me, which is why I probably have the most number of habits associated with getting rid of the phone. Because I've tried every single thing that I can possibly try. And then slowly making peace with it is the only aspect. So now,
what do you think has relatively worked for you? What do you think has relatively worked for you more?
So outsourcing as much of the phone usage as I can. So getting a social media person to handle as much junjat as possible. That was one. And the second is not picking up the phone in the morning and putting the phone away at night.
That's really interesting. What I tend to do is when I'm going to go for a workout or whatever, I think it's just I just keep the phone away, very, very far away. And so, for example, I just force myself to have times when I don't have a phone and I'm working on, for example, and that tends to. Okay, so here's the question that the Kolosseum team is saying: ask each other a question. You've obviously shared, different points of view, some concurring point of view. So, Shyju, if there was one question you wanted to ask Ashdin, and if Ashdin wanted to ask a question to Shyju, what would they?
So, let me. What are the biggest habits that people want to change? What is the biggest thing the country today, going by the subset of the people that you coach, Ashdin?
I think the biggest, it's a very, very layered question because it depends on which aspect of their life. But I think one of the biggest problems is with regards to food and the way food is being consumed right now. We are very quickly moving towards a junk food world, and we're moving towards the American diet instead of the Indian diet. So I'm seeing that as a big struggle coming up. And moving people away from that is going to be something that's going to be a challenge for sure.
That's interesting. Well, Ashdin, your turn now.
For you, was yoga first a physical journey or a spiritual journey? What triggered it off for you?
When I got into yoga, I had no clue. I went straight for a teacher's training course. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what hit me. But what it did to me physically was what got me onto it in the first place, because I couldn't touch my ankles with my toes, when I entered the course. But when I got out of it, I could stand on my palms, and I didn't think that was possible at all. So that opened up so many eventualities, possibilities for me. Then I went and did an advanced teachers training course, which is when the spiritual aspect kind of kicked in. That was a good 2 years after I actually got into yoga.
Okay, interesting.
That's
Lovely.
interesting. Physical first, and then the spiritual bit. Guys,
but in everything I teach, I completely de-emphasize the physical. The physical is only a means to an end. I completely de-emphasize it. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So you're not teaching the way in which you learned.
No.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. That's good. Actually, that's good in a way. Hey guys, 6 o'clock. We've reached our time limit. I think we must have expanded attention spans of people. But thank you so much. It was brilliant talking to both of you. If I've upset anybody or ruffled any feathers, I apologize. Mistake all mine. I think you will find yourself a lot of new fans, both of you, Ashdin and Shyju, and for all the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you so much. We are going to shut the live session now. Do stay on there, because the Kolosseum team would also like to say a goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.